Ever wish you could, like, control your devices just by thinking about it? That's what Elon Musk's Neuralink is aiming for. Pretty ambitious, right?
Hmm.
Today, we're going to deep dive into what it is and what it could mean, for all of us.
Definitely caught everyone's attention. Neuralink is all about brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs, and yeah, the tech is already making some big waves.
We've got a ton of research and articles, and honestly, some of this stuff is kind of mind-blowing.
So the core of Neuralink, these threads, they're super tiny, thinner than hair, and get this, they're meant to be implanted directly into the brain.
Okay, hold on. How do these threads actually, like, work
Hmm.
picking up signals from our brains, right?
Yeah, exactly. Our brains work on electrical impulses, right? Every thought, movement, it's all electrical signals. These electrodes on the threads are like tiny antennas picking up those signals.
Mhm.
And because there are thousands of them on each thread,
They can pick up a ton of activity.
precisely. And it's not just one general signal. They're getting specific info from different parts of the brain. But here's where the engineering gets crazy. These signals are super faint, so they need to be amplified and processed. That's where the Neuralink chip comes in. It's implanted with the threads, and it's basically a tiny computer cleaning up the signal,
Wait, so then what?
getting it ready for transmission.
Transmission. You mean like sending brain signals wirelessly?
You got it. Bluetooth for the brain. The chip transmits the processed signals to external devices, computers, prosthetics, whatever.
Wow. So someone with a Neuralink could control stuff just by thinking.
That's the goal. Translating those raw brain signals into commands is a huge challenge, but that's what they're working on.
So it's not just reading the brain, it's understanding it.
Exactly, learning the brain's language. As Neuralink gets more data, that translation gets more accurate.
It's like sci-fi, but real.
Oh, totally. And get this, the threads are made from these advanced materials. They're biocompatible, so they're designed to last in the brain without causing damage.
I read about their surgical robot for implanting the threads. Why is that so important?
Well, the brain is super delicate, right? Any surgery has risks. Neuralink's robot is all about precision, minimizing damage to brain tissue.
Like a high-tech sewing machine, but for the brain.
It's this blend of biology, engineering, robotics, and shows how committed they are to making the implant safe. Their goal is to make it routine, like LASIK.
Okay, so we've got these threads picking up signals, a chip processing the data, wireless transmission. But what does it all mean practically? What can Neuralink do?
That's where it gets interesting. But first, I think it's important to say that the initial focus is medical applications,
Like what?
helping people with neurological conditions. We've heard a lot about how it could help people with paralysis. Imagine someone who can't move their limbs because of a spinal cord injury.
But their brain is still sending the signals they just can't get through.
Exactly. Neuralink could be a bridge, bypassing the damage, picking up those movement signals from the brain and transmitting them to a device controlling a prosthetic.
So they could think move, and the prosthetic would move.
Yep. And not just basic movement, think fine motor control, doing complex tasks.
Incredible. And paralysis is just one example.
Right. Research suggests it could treat things like Parkinson's disease, where tremors and movement issues are caused by problems in brain activity,
So Neuralink could, like, detect those problems
and deliver targeted electrical stimulation to counter them.
instead of medication.
Exactly. They're even looking at how it could help with epilepsy, detecting a seizure and disrupting the brain activity to stop it from happening.
That would be huge for people who live with that fear.
Yeah.
But medical stuff aside, what about enhancing abilities?
Right, that's where things get really wild. We'll dive into that next. Stuff like boosting memory, enhancing learning, even changing how we communicate.
Things are about to get even more interesting, folks.
Welcome back. So we just talked about how Neuralink could be like a game changer for medical treatments, but what about, pushing the limits of what humans can do?
It's kind of sci-fi, right? You mentioned memory and learning. How could Neuralink actually do that? Our brains are, like, super complicated.
Oh, they are. But we're figuring out the processes behind memory and learning. Neuralink could potentially, stimulate those specific brain areas to boost their efficiency.
So instead of studying, you just get a Neuralink boot and remember everything.
Well, it might not be that easy, but the idea is to speed up learning and maybe even increase our memory capacity.
I don't know. Wouldn't that be weird? Like, what happens to, the joy of learning, the satisfaction of working hard to learn something? If you just download knowledge, does it even mean anything?
That's a good point. It's really important to think about what this means for society, like access to this technology could be a big deal in education and jobs.
Right. So you could have people who can afford to enhance their brains and those who can't. That just creates more inequality, doesn't it?
Exactly. Making sure this tech is developed responsibly is super important, Thinking about everyone.
What about communication?
Yeah.
You said it could change how we communicate. Are we talking like actual telepathy here?
Well, telepathy, like mind reading, that's still pretty far out. But Neuralink could make communication more direct, without having to use words.
I don't get it.
Think about sharing a thought or feeling, a complex one, directly to someone else who also has Neuralink. Instead of trying to explain it with words, you just transmit it.
Whoa, that's kind of creepy. But also cool. But what about privacy? Could someone, like, get into my thoughts without me knowing?
Yeah, that's a big one. Data security and privacy are huge when you're talking about tech that connects directly to the brain. With Neuralink, we're talking thoughts, memories, experiences, the most personal stuff.
So we need rules and guidelines right away.
For sure. Strong security and clear ethics are going to be super important, to make sure it's used for good.
Okay, but we've been talking about the good stuff. What about, the bad stuff? Things we need to be careful about.
Of course, every new technology has risks, right? With Neuralink, we got to be aware of unintended consequences, even when we're trying to do good.
Like what? Give me an example.
Think about gaming, right? Gamers controlling their avatars with their minds. Totally immersive. Sounds cool.
Yeah, that does sound amazing for gamers.
But what if it gets too addictive, so real that they can't separate it from real life, neglect their actual lives?
Like living in a video game.
Exactly. And what if someone with bad intentions gets their hands on it? Could they use it to, control people? These are the things we need to think about before it's everywhere.
Right. And what about hackers? If my thoughts are digital, can someone hack into them?
Absolutely. Cybersecurity is going to be essential. We're not just protecting computers anymore. We're protecting minds, right? It's a whole new level.
High stakes. We need to be really careful.
Yeah.
So Neuralink, it could change medicine, boost our abilities, even how we talk to each other.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of ethical stuff and questions we need to answer.
Yeah. Totally. We need to be having these conversations now. While it's still early, it's important for the future of Neuralink and maybe even the future of humans.
It's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Like amazing potential, but also some serious concerns. It feels like we're at the edge of something, I don't know, huge. Like it could change everything.
You're right, We can't just focus on the cool, futuristic stuff. We got to really think about what could happen, good and bad.
Yeah, all the ethical things we talked about, right? Data, privacy, inequality, what it means to be human. It's a lot. How do you think these issues will, actually play out?
That's the question, isn't it? I think it's going to take everyone working together, scientists, policymakers, ethicists, even just regular people to figure this out. We need to talk about what kind of future we want, with all this tech.
And those conversations need to be happening, now, right? Not after it's already everywhere.
For sure. We can't just wait and react,
Yeah.
We got to be proactive, thinking about regulations, guidelines, even safety nets for people who might be negatively impacted.
Okay, but what about, people using it for bad stuff? Could it be used to, force people to do things or control them?
Yeah, that's a real worry. And that's why strong safeguards are so important. Security, access controls, maybe even new laws. We can't just assume it'll be okay.
It's like we need a whole new set of rules for, brain-computer stuff, something that really gets the specific challenges.
Absolutely. We got to think beyond the old ideas of privacy and security. This is about, who we are, our thoughts, our memories. That's deep stuff.
It's like we need, I don't know, a Bill of Rights, but for our brains in the age of Neuralink.
I like that. We need to protect our, cognitive rights as much as our other rights.
Okay, so after all this, I got to ask, if you could, would you get a Neuralink implant?
Ooh, that's a tough one. It would depend, What can it actually do? How risky is it? What are the ethical implications? It's not a simple yes or no.
Right, it's not just about the tech. It's about, everything else.
Totally. Understanding the trade-offs, the benefits, the risks, and making a choice that feels right for you, based on what you believe.
So where does all this leave us? We've talked about the amazing stuff Neuralink could do, but also the real concerns.
Yeah.
What's the, final takeaway for everyone listening?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed, Keep learning and asking the tough questions. Neuralink and all this brain-computer stuff, it's changing fast. It could change our world completely. It's up to all of us to make sure that change is good.
This has been an amazing deep dive into Neuralink. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing all this, incredible information.
My pleasure. And everyone listening, keep exploring, keep learning. The future depends on it.